Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Green Room Podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Colin Mitchell. Colin, for the second consecutive podcast, we have JD Davis on, North Texas Eagle. Colin, I guess he's just become a mainstay. JD, how are
Yeah,
you doing?
I appreciate you guys having me. Hopefully my computer and everything works this time so we have no technical difficulties.
Yeah, we said after last time, we were like, all right, we got to get him back on. We got to give him another shot here to to get on the podcast and talk North Texas, because last time it's quite a show. Now this time though, there is a storm coming through Louisiana, so it might be me that just drops out randomly. I don't know. I can't guarantee anything. Um, but JD, it was the spring game this past weekend, and obviously, quick disclaimer for everybody who doesn't already, but follow North Texas Eagle and JD Davis on Twitter and Patreon. Man, they have done a great job building it up over there. Sonoy Valente, Miles, everybody. Um, y'all have a great group of guys, and I know y'all have started building up that Patreon really, really well. So credit to you, JD, and yeah, we'll let you plug it at the end, but I wanted to give you a shout out as well.
Appreciate you guys. Thank y'all.
But spring game, it was a game that Green beat White 27-17. They put the rosters out. I actually love this format because it's the most like traditional and like easiest to follow. When you do offense, defense, and the point system stuff, it can be a little complicated. Be like, well, the offense scored like 10 times, but the defense had 70 points. So I don't know how it works. I think, some teams nowadays also just do situational. So you can't really take, a ton from it. But if we just start there with Green beating White, and I think I saw on Twitter some of the Green players were like, it was actually 27-3. We beat the heck out of them, all that stuff. I guess what was the biggest takeaway from the day before we get into too much of the granular stuff?
I mean, I think the biggest takeaway was, when you list out like the top performers, the guys that stood out, there was a lot of transfers in that list. And I think that was the one positive I seen was they got a lot of guys that look like they're going to be players. That's I think the biggest concern when you take in that many transfers is, there's a chance you could grab a bunch of bust, a bunch of guys that, aren't going to fit the scheme, a bunch of guys that aren't going to be able to see the field, and then you're just setting your program back, for several years to come. So I think that was the one bright spot for me is when you make a list of the top performers, the guys that stood out. I would say 80% of those guys on a top 10 list were new guys that were just making their first time on the program, or transfers, however you want to say it.
Of the new guys on the field, who were the biggest standouts in your eyes?
I'll go one offense, one defense. I think on offense, Oscar Hammond, the tight end from Central Oklahoma, he's a guy that we've heard his name mentioned several times in the spring practice, but you hear a lot of names, and then not all the times those guys deliver. But to me, he is a guy that stood out. I mean, one of the guys that I trust his scouting more than pretty much any guy I know. That was the first guy he mentioned, and he mentioned he's a white Varkey's Gums, potentially with better hands. So to me, that's exciting. That's the guy that sent that text is not a guy that, sugarcoats anything. He's pretty hard on his evaluation. So hearing that was exciting to me. And then I think Ashim Young, the safety from Ole Miss, originally from Iowa State, having a guy like that on the back end with the experience in the 3-3-5, can be a built-in leader. On that defensive side of the ball, I would say that was the standout on the defensive side. So, like I mentioned, two transfers being, the key guys on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I know a good amount of players were out for this. I think, what was that? I was just looking at the receiver position, especially. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a good amount of talent that North Texas will have that was sidelined for that, correct?
Yeah, you're missing, Jeremiah Aaron, Landon Sides, McMillan.
I know Gabe Blair didn't play. I know it's not a receiver, but yeah.
Yeah, Cortland Rosal, Gabe Blair, Jalen Smith, Kika Ragsdale, Kiefer Sibley, Zach Evans. I mean, the running back room, I think, was definitely the room that was hit the hardest by injuries and guys that just haven't came back yet from past injuries. But, there were several key contributors there that weren't able to suit up. And I think that kind of stood out during the scrimmage because you had, guys that are actually recruited as wide receivers actually playing running back. So shout out Shane Porter, transfer from Kansas State, who's a wide receiver, but kind of looked the part, playing running back this spring. So it'll be interesting to see if he kind of sticks there moving forward.
How'd Trey Bradford look? Did he get a lot of carries in this one?
Yeah, I mean, Trey Bradford, like we've talked about, he's got the skills, he's got the talent, definitely looks the part. I mean, we've seen, when he's seen the field at LSU, he's a guy that can definitely contribute. I think, like I mentioned with Sonoy pre-spring, I think he's a guy that you're not concerned about his skills. You're not concerned about, if he gets on the field, will he contribute? I think it's more of, can Coach Morris, Coach Cobbs keep him connected, keep him, locked in and keep him on the roster throughout fall.
Sorry, my camera is clearly just destroying my face.
It got really white. I don't know.
We'll just roll through it, I guess. I can't control my blinds anymore. So, anyways, this is it. I just lost my complete train of thought. Okay,
right.
so
I was gonna
moving into, I guess, younger players. Like, how did like a Cash McCollum look, or I guess a Reese Mooney, or I'm trying to go down the list here on the left.
Yeah, just in general, I guess.
Yeah,
young.
Yeah, Cash McCollum, I think he ended up throwing an interception, but several people reached out to me after the game. He's got the size to be a legit, Division I quarterback, and also a guy that can play on Sundays. But not only did he have the size, but he looked the part. I mean, that was the thing that stood out. That he's legit. He's not just a 6'4" guy that can't move or anything like that. Like, he's got the skill set to potentially, I would say he's your quarterback for the future for North Texas. I think he may not, I don't think he'll play this fall unless injuries happen. But I think after this season, I mean, he's a guy you could pencil in as battling for the starting job and potentially keeping it for a few years. I would say he's probably one of the key younger guy standouts. I think, Keith Smith is a guy that on the defensive side that's name's been mentioned a lot, that, on a defensive line that I think's got some skills, but I just don't think they've got the depth they need yet. Hopefully there's some more guys coming in, more backup coming in, but he's a guy that's definitely flashed this spring and looks like he's going to be a player moving forward.
Well, let's jump to Reese Mooney. It was Mooney versus Stone Earl. I guess technically white versus green. What have you heard about Reese? And I guess bigger conversation is, how confident are you now leaving the spring with Chandler Morris still, coming in during the summer?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely Stone versus Morris moving into summer ball. I mean, I think that's not nothing I've heard. That's just, me.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing, what I saw. I think it's definitely 100%, Stone versus Morris. And I mean, Stone played great. Stone, has improved from last season, but like we said, Stone won the starting job last year. So, I think that I don't judge Stone, his performance on those 2 games he started last year. I think he's still a competent and could be a solid American Conference quarterback. But yeah, I mean, I think that's hands down the battle we're going to have to watch going through summer into fall will be those 2 guys. I think if I had to rank McCollum and Mooney, I would say McCollum. I've got him, above Mooney at this point, but I think those are both 2 young guys that, will battle it out in the future. But I don't think their time is quite yet.
So right now you'd say, and obviously this is without Morris being on campus at this point, just if you were projecting, you'd have it something like Morris, Stone, Mooney, McCollum.
Yeah, and I think without Morris, I think Morris was at the spring game on the sidelines, but without taking snaps, I think at this point you'd have to have Stone 1A, Morris 1B, just because he hasn't been at practice. I think I feel kind of bad, going ahead and naming him the starter without actually being on the field. So yeah, I mean, I think Stone's 1A, Morris 1B, and then you've got McCollum and then Mooney.
Outside of quarterbacks, was there any, I guess, big highlights that you guys saw?
I mean, I think just the safeties. To me, they brought in a bunch of veterans. They brought in, a lot of skilled guys. I mean, I think, BJ Allen's a guy that, former 4-star guy. I think the thing that stood out the most was watching those safeties, fill run gaps, something that we didn't see last year. But I think you just seen their veteran presence, and then having a guy like Rich Tejada back, who's he may not be the tallest cornerback, but I think pound for pound he's probably one of the best cornerbacks in the country. Getting him back, I think that safety room went from one of the youngest, one of the most questioned positions on the team to potentially, I would say that's your strong point at this point, is that the safeties and defensive back room is really impressive, and I think you can probably put them toe to toe with anybody in the American Conference, and North Texas is there in that conversation. So seeing those veteran guys really step up, I think would be the highlight on the defensive side of the ball, and probably the spring game as well.
All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Top 3 defense players on the roster.
Rod Brown,
Yeah.
Isom Young, and then I'm going Rich Tejada. I think that he's just a guy that's done it. He's a guy that's been here. I know he gets a lot of crap for maybe not being the tallest cornerback, but I mean I still think that he was pushed off against UTSA. I mean I think that play gets brought up a bunch, but I mean I still think that was an offensive pass interference. But yeah, those are my 3 guys I would say leaving out of.
That's a good. I mean, that's a really good core. Like of really, those are 3 players that could, if not should, make all conference teams.
Yeah,
like just in theory. So if they can figure everything else out around them, I mean, that's a really good core to go with.
And we didn't even mention, I mean, Shipley, Jake Shipley from Oregon, the defensive line transfer. He was a guy that stood out. June coming back on that defensive line. I mean, Weslowski and Brown at the linebacker position. I mean, they're bringing a bunch of guys back that I think this defense is going to be much improved from where they were last year. I really do. I think that this defense has a chance to surprise some fans, especially if they can bring in a couple, potential depth guys along that defensive line as well. I think that this defense could take a big jump this fall, and I think that North Texas is going to need it to kind of rise to the next level in the American Conference.
My last question involving, I guess, just position, offensive line. That's kind of I guess not a weak point, but it's question mark. Was there anyone that kind of stood out outside of the normal, like Jet Duncan or anybody like that?
No, I mean, I think the thing that stood out is the size. I mean, I think that's something we've talked about. I mean, you can't, bypass that the staff, made a point to get bigger along the offensive line, and I think they've done that. I think that the question mark with the way they did the separating the teams, I don't think we actually seen a true starting 5 offensive line.
Right.
So I would like to see that together, see what that's kind of, doing like. I think pass protection was kind of a concern, and especially against our defense, a defense that didn't have the best of luck last year, creating pressure. I would say that was probably my biggest concern leaving spring game was the pass. I think this team's going to be able to run the ball. I think with the size, they're going to be able to do that. But yeah, I would say biggest concern along the offensive line is pass protection. And then, who is the actual starting 5? I think they've got 8 to 9 guys that can rotate in there and play multiple positions. So that's going to be interesting to see when that first depth chart comes out, how they've kind of got everybody placed.
For sure.
I mean, are there any players you have locked in on the offensive line right now that you're like, okay, Gabe Blair, boom.
Yeah.
Jet Duncan, boom.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jet Duncan, Gabe Blair, those are the 2 that I would say, those guys. Jet Duncan's been a guy that's bounced around and I think played pretty much all 5 positions. And, undersized guy, but, like I said, with Rich Tejada, I mean, pound for pound, he's probably one of the best offensive linemen in the American Conference. So I think those 2 guys are 2 you'd have to lock in. Then Peterson from Texas Tech, Lee from Missouri.
Yeah, they're all transfers of that.
Yeah.
Johnny Dickinson.
Yeah, I mean, and then, like I said, you start going down the list. I mean, the guy they got from Tech last year that I went blank on, there's several guys battling. Guillory from SFA, who was a multi-year starter, all-conference guy. I mean, they've definitely got some depth there that even if one guy goes down, there's hopefully, next man up mentality. There's like I said, should be 9 to 10 guys there that could potentially start and also be there to back up in case some injuries happen.
Cool. So leaving spring, I guess finish the sentence. Leaving spring, you feel
much better than I did last year.
okay.
I do.
Good.
I do. I think there's definitely some. I think running back room, you're going to have to get healthy.
Yeah.
I think, offensive line, you're going to have to figure out who your 5 are, potentially work on some pass protection. And I think defensive line, you're going to have to bring in some guys to add depth there. I think you're not at a D1 level as far as depth goes. I think there is some talent, there is some potential there. But at that, even saying that, I do feel better leaving this spring than I did last spring. I think that there's definitely some pieces to work with, and definitely some younger guys that look like, are definitely going to be dudes moving forward. So that's exciting. I mean, a lot of guys are going to be playing this fall. Came from Morris's first 2 recruiting classes.
Yeah. Dude, defensive line is across the country. Like every team, it seems like, even SEC, Big 12, like everyone's like, we need defensive linemen. It is such a heralded position right now in the transfer portal era where it's like a lot of teams just don't have it. And when you do have it, like the teams that do have it are Texas, Michigan, and those teams. Like everybody else is like, we don't have nothing. Like LSU doesn't have defensive tackles. No, like Texas is even lacking on defensive tackles right now because all theirs are in the draft and they lost their D-line coach. So it's like it is a hard position to get like a lot of depth at, but it's important.
I think it's a position that we've seen it in the past, but I feel like coaches are going to have to get more creative with this. I mean, you look at a guy like Ladarius Hamilton was a linebacker from 2A Texas football, and comes in and becomes an all-conference defensive end. There was a guy that North Texas had on campus 2 years ago that was an offensive tackle walk-on. He goes to JUCO, becomes a defensive tackle, and he signs with Baylor this year. So, I think when you have guys like that on campus, you're going to have to get creative and realize, hey, instead of being a third string, offensive tackle, let's try to put you at defensive tackle, put you at the one technique. And I think I feel like we're going to see that moving forward. I think the guy that we signed from Braswell this year, I think he's a defensive tackle. They've talked about moving him to offensive line, but I think you're going to have to get creative and kind of find some of those under the radar guys and try to develop them. Because, like I said, you're not going to be able to go out, especially in the NIL era, and find ready to play defensive linemen. You're going to have to get creative.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely one of the toughest things. All right, that's all we got, JD. We did it. Nobody had power outages. Nobody was knocking on our doors.
Just had sun on my face.
Colin had to get up briefly to go turn down his blinds, so he actually had color in his skin again.
Colin had the opposite of the eclipse. The sun was actually in his room.
Hey, that eclipse is wild.
That was good.
I've never seen like a total solar eclipse, so that was pretty cool.
The videos looked cool. It was cloudy and rainy over here.
I forget you didn't even see it. Yeah.
Well, tough. I feel like if there weren't clouds, I think I would have gotten like 80%.
Yeah, it's not good enough though. It doesn't do it justice.
I wasn't gonna look at it anyways. Honestly, I was scared, and I don't have glasses, so.
We had our whole work company. We went outside and had had food picnic, like Star Crunch and moon pies and Sunny D and all that stuff. And I felt like we sat out there for 40 minutes, and the eclipse was a total of felt like 2 minutes, and then all right, back inside, back to work.
Yeah,
it's over with.
You got to stay an extra 30 minutes for us sitting outside. Sorry.
Yeah.
Work day don't end until 5:30 today, guys. Get back in there.
But yeah, JD, plug your Patreon, plug everything, because y'all, like I said before, y'all do a great job over there covering everything.
I appreciate it. Yeah. So North Texas Eagle on Patreon, the NT Eagle on Twitter, and then you can follow me on North Texas Eagle. We're definitely going to keep having interviews. Hopefully have some coaches on here before long. I would like to, kind of branch out a little more into basketball this year as the basketball team's kind of in disarray right now. So hopefully we can start having a little more basketball content and try to, but yeah, like I said, we'll check us out and hopefully enjoy what you see.
There's the sales pitch. Check them out. Patreon. It's only $5, at least that I've seen. I don't know if y'all need a super like a $30 a month package, and JD will come to your house and talk North Texas football with
you. Yes, or you can come out to JD Cattle Company, and you can pick out your own steaks and hang out, and
Hey,
spend the day on the farm. That's what the $30 package entails. The VIP
do like
package.
a little tour.
Yes, you get a tour of JD Cattle Co. if you pay $30 a month. There we go.
hey, don't tempt me with good times. Don't do that.
We'll deliver to Baton Rouge for you, Matthew. Don't
There
worry
you
about
go. There you go. But yeah, thanks, JD, coming on.
Thanks, guys.